Worldwide movement. Peace, love, respect. Big King Sadiq hollering at you one more again. All right, folks. First of all, thank you. Man, it's been an incredible journey and certainly a very interesting year. And I just want to thank you all for rolling with me through this, right? And continuing to build the worldwide movement. Peace, love, respect. All right. Thank you all truly. Please continue to like, share, subscribe. Remember, we are really pushing to achieve and accomplish this goal of 444 to hit that beautiful synchronicity number. Let's do that. Let's get the subscribers up to 444. And let's continue to build this worldwide movement. Remember, check me out on all the platforms, all the streaming platforms for my music. The album is out, PLR New Paradigm. Please check my Twitter feed. And please be sure whenever you go to the channel to go to the community section of the channel. Some very specific and detailed information there, a lot of which not necessarily contained in the videos, so please definitely check that out. All right, folks, man, again, thank you all. I love you all. And this has been a year where we have learned much, right? As I stated, that's what 2022 is all about, duality, right? Which means that you have a choice to make, You can go this way or that way, right? That's duality. It can be this way or that way. And you can either choose a high vibrational frequency path of ascension, or you could choose a low vibrational frequency existence that will leave you harnessed by the old paradigm, right? Those who are seeking ascension and who are on that path are helping right now to establish the new paradigm on the planet, the way things will work, right? So that's a beautiful thing. But again, in the duality, we need to understand that if you are going to make a choice, right, it's only right that you make an informed choice, right? So as things shall play out justly, right, surely we have been informed of much, right? Those who have been paying attention to a lot of things that have been coming out. And shout out to all the YouTubers and all the folks who've been using their platforms and their influence to bring out light and truth, right? Man, thank you for shining a light on so much. We appreciate that. And we will continue to do our part to do the same. And one of the things that was prominently brought out, right, or at least discovered by those whose eyes are open enough to see, is that there were a lot of things stated, right, during this time of the pandemic. And during that time, right, during the time of all the protocols that were put in place as response to that, there were a lot of things that were stated to folks, right, to sort of convince or sway them to following the directives, right, the suggestions, and the protocols that were put in place, again, as a response to that. And we're finding out that there are a lot of things that were not truthfully communicated to you. And we're certainly not forthcoming in sharing information, like the pharmaceutical industry did not disclose a whole lot of information about the vaccines, the process of how the vaccines were developed, right? A lot of the testing results, right? In fact, we can, if you do the research, you will be able to go back on various multimedia outlets and find news persons reporting to you over again, and folks who they call for medical advice, right? The medical advisors often gave you rhetoric that basically told you, listen, vaccine, stop this, this disease dead in this, and you won't be who contracts the disease or passes it, right? Okay. Well, how is it then that when questioned, many of the representatives of these various pharmaceutical companies admit they in fact have test results that give them clear and definite indication that, one, they would just be wiping out the disease, that you would not be contracting it, you would be protecting yourself to the point of not being able to contract it, and two, that you wouldn't be passing it on to others. And we find that that's just not the case, right? But there's a multitude of things that have been kept secret or kept hidden. One of the biggest things is the profits. Folks, these pharmaceutical companies have enjoyed record profits. Now, it's mighty funny. Not really funny, but funny in that it's fishy, right? That during all of these emergencies and things that have affected the people, the masses of the people, in ways that have been very stifling, right? Financially, a myriad of ways, we've seen hardship over the past 10 years. But isn't it, or does it not just strike anyone other than me a little peculiar that during that time, the pharmaceutical industry particularly has enjoyed record profits, right? You can go back, and it's always when these emergencies occur, and we can go back to the bailouts, right? And then those same financial institutions turn around and record record profits. We could go to a myriad of things that show that when the quote unquote powers that be declare an emergency, it turns into profit for the corporations who are positioned to do so, right? And also, all too often, that has turned out to be the major power players, right? The pharmaceutical industry, the fossil fuel industries. Now, we've gone on since, to my recollection, since the second President Bush was in office, we have seen incredible jumps in the price of oil or gasoline, right? Folks in my generation remember when gas was, $1 a gallon, like literally, right? But now they've enjoyed ever since President Bush, and particularly right around that time, they enjoy record profits. So it's a pattern, is what I'm saying. Every time we are alerted to by the multimedia, right, of these conditions of emergency, right? So one, the masses are alerted and somehow it's put into your brain, right, through all the programming that you're given through the multimedia, which those who have checked into that realize that in particular things like the news are scripted, folks. It's all ran by 6 corporations, literally, that work together, right? And work in collusion with the government, right? Now, when I say the government, I mean particularly the federal government and the agenda that the power structures, right? Those who work to keep the power structures in place, the socioeconomic elites, right, who have their control, particularly in this country, right, exercised and carried out in so many ways, but particularly by these massive power structures, the pharmaceutical industry, the military industrial complex, et cetera, et cetera. We see that you'll get alerted by these, by the multimedia institutions to these emergency situations. Then we'll see a government response, right? And then you see corporate profit. So media presents the situation to you. Government gives you their response, right? And then corporations end up benefiting from it. Look for that pattern over the past 10 to 15 years in particular. If you look throughout our history, you will find it. But particularly of interest, look in the past 10 to 15 years. The patterns are clear, right? Are clear. And the collusion is essentially undeniable, right? So, what do we have? We have the folks who are supposed to be represented, the masses, we the people, instead of being represented by our government, right? And what we deem to be in our best interests, what is carried out by our government, we see our government acting in the best interest of corporations, right? If you disagree with that, fine, right? And I say that so confidently because most people by now are at least not naive enough to see that government has swayed from representing the people to representing the corporations. That's essentially what we're looking at, right? Which means all these promising politicians, before they get in office and they give you all these promises, are just lying to you folks, right? Because they know all along where their allegiance is, right? The famous "don't bite the hand that feeds you." Well, who's feeding them the most, right? Perfect example. Former prominent government official, Fauci, right? While being one of the most highly paid government officials, non-elected government officials, he was receiving much more from the pharmaceutical industry. Much more, right? Exponentially so. So, if that's the case, who do you think he considers to be the hand that feeds him? Those pharmaceutical industries. So, as a government official who was in charge of dictating policy, who do you think he's going to make policies to benefit? The hand that feeds him. Not you. Heck, he's not even elected by you. Think about that. Think about that. How many non-elected government officials are there? One, right? How many of them are in very powerful positions? Two. And three, we always do it in threes. How do we get to this point where it's not even difficult to see that those who are supposed to be representing our best interest in government are actually representing the socio-economic elites who control the massive corporations of this nation and the world, right? Okay. Folks, I don't have to completely reiterate the fact that the world has literally been ran by these power structures that have been kept in place in an old paradigm that we're changing now, right? But we do need to open up our eyes and see the correlation and see the things we need to change, right? That is what 2022 is all about, the things we need to change. And much of it has to do with the way this world works, which includes the way this country works and is run. Many of us consider ourselves to be quote unquote patriots and have a very strong sense of country, right? Okay, I'll ask you then, when you think of your country and what you were told this country was supposed to represent, be about, and, you know, things of that nature, what is the overall mission statement of the country, right? Or whatever it is about your country that has stirred up your allegiance, right? As a patriot. Do you feel the way that this country is being ran right now is in the best interest of the people of the country, that the folks who are representing or are supposed to be representing the masses in this country are in fact doing so? Or do you look and see something starkly different? If you do, you realize there is work to do. Folks, I talk a lot about the change in paradigms, and that is unavoidable, right? The low vibers, right? Those who have made their choice already and who are clinging to a low vibrational frequency old paradigm on this planet, one in which the socioeconomic elite have enjoyed almost complete control. Those folks have made their choice, and that's fine. No judgment, right? But this year, again, being about duality, 2022, right? It's all in the numerology. We had to learn what it is that's wrong so that we can make it right. Making it right means work. If we're going to work, we need to look specifically at what work needs to be done. If we're going to correct and make our government what we want it to be, and for it to be representative of the people of this nation, then we're going to have to do work. What we don't need to continue to do, and what we cannot afford to continue to do, is put your energy into electing someone who does not represent you, who is not looking out for your best interest. We need our energy to be focused on our sovereignty, right? To be focused on changing our government to actually be representative of the people of this nation, right? We need to take the blinders off and recognize all those who have aligned themselves with the socially economic elite and who fight stringently to try and hold on to that old paradigm, right? And we need to see how their influence has reached into our lives at every level, saturating every institution that touches our everyday lives and affecting us from the macro all the way down to the micro. And folks, I mean, from a government level, state level, federal government, state, local. I'm not even just talking government, folks. I'm talking about every walk of life, down to the folks that you turn to see in your community. The choice is there for all of us. That's what duality is about, right? It's about one way or the other. You have two choices, two options. Select one. Choose to move forward in a high vibrational frequency paradigm in which we've got a lot of work to do to change the way things work, right? So that we can truly shape our paradigm. Or we can choose a low vibrational frequency. And folks, please understand, when I say low vibrational frequency and high vibrational frequency, don't think I'm just throwing them terms around. In fact, if you feel that way, do some research and go back and find out what it does mean when we say low vibe. And when we talk about low vibrational frequency, we're talking about all the misery, pain, and hate, the grief, the suffering, the jealousy, the envy, the fear, right? Probably the biggest part of it in this fear-driven society. All those emotional and mental states that carry a low vibrational frequency in human beings. When we talk about a high vibrational frequency, we're talking about sovereignty. We're talking about enlightenment. We're talking about discovery. We're talking about love, right? Acceptance. All of these things, right, carry a higher vibrational frequency. So when we talk about correlating ways that a paradigm would instill that in your reality, that's what we're referring to, right? We're referring to a paradigm where the socio-economic elite have enjoyed control over the world's governments on all levels, and many of the people who have aligned themselves with furthering and trying to hold on to save these remnants of the old paradigm, right? And I say that, folks, because it is just that. It's just remnants now, right? But that doesn't mean we still don't have to do all the work that is necessary to get these things out of place. None of this stuff happened overnight by a long shot, which means we won't solve it overnight by a long shot. But at the same time, we don't have to trudge along at a snail's pace, particularly when we're learning so much, because as we learn more, right, we see that much more that we can change. We see the different ways that we want to shape our paradigm. Remember, duality, the choice. Will you choose this or will you choose that? Now, fear, I brought up. Fear is a big part of this, folks. A lot of folks are afraid of moving out of the old paradigm because to them it represents a certain sense of security or comfort, right? And many of us, because of the layers and layers and layers of indoctrination that have been heaped upon us, all of our lives, right, are very fearful of leaving away from that security, right? Many of us are so engulfed in survival mentality that it's difficult to look beyond the rat race. And I understand that. I do not blame you. All of that is purposeful. Remember, and I've spoke about this many of times, it is all designed to keep you too busy to do analytical thinking, to think about the world and the way it works, to think about your country and the way it works, to think about your neighborhood or even your family and the way it works. Most of us are too distracted to do that, right? And again, there is that fear. Because folks, if you're happy with the way things are going on, or you feel happy and you're very nuzzled and nestled up in your material that gives you a certain sense of security in the old paradigm, then you don't want things to change. And you don't want to see a new paradigm. Many of the folks who enjoy extreme wealth in this world don't want to hear any conversation of wealth redistribution. There has to, in many of our minds, there has to be haves and have-nots. We don't have to have a have and have-not system, folks. We simply do not. We can have equality. When we focus on resources on this planet, first of all, it's a change in mentality. Separation mentality versus unity consciousness. Separation mentality is what has got us to where we're at and is the prevailing mentality in the old paradigm. Unity consciousness is where we're headed, right? Understanding connectivity, because in reality, folks, we are in fact all connected, right? And the more we start to uncover and learn about physics and, metaphysics, right? Quantum physics and things of that nature, the more we understand how we are all connected as living beings, right? And how we are certainly connected to this planet. And in the old paradigm, human beings weren't treated well. Beings on this planet aren't necessarily treated well. Look at how we do the animals and insects of the planet, right? And the planet herself not treated with very much respect in the old paradigm. Folks, you could choose that, and I don't blame you. You're only going to have it for the rest of your lifetime. Or the rest of however much of your lifetime you get to see it. But it's not going past this generation, right? The old paradigm is already a thing of the past that lives in previous generations. When I say previous generations, I mean generations that have been here and saturated with the layers and layers of indoctrination that make you be of a state that is really latching on and holding on to the old paradigm. I don't blame you for that, but after reincarnation, you'll be back here in a new vessel that is much more adaptable to a high vibration.